Ever since the dawn of superheroes like Superman and Batman, there have been female versions of them like Batgirl and Supergirl. And even over the years, there have been 4 different people calling themselves Spider-Woman. So why wouldn't the bad guys want to get in on this? Hey everybody, I'm Hossman Comics. Today we're going to take a quick look at some female versions of Spider-Man's most notorious rogues. And this is without going into alternate universes. This is straight up the 616 core universe. Let's start with Francine Fire, Lady Electro. She first appeared in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3, Issue Number 2. She was created by Dan Slott, and she was portrayed as a supervillain groupie when Max Dillon, better known as Electro, comes to pay her a visit. This here is a bit of a ball drop in my opinion because I actually like the idea of this character. Someone obsessed with the idea of these supervillains, and she gets a thrill out of the danger of being with them. I think it's a cool concept, and I wish it would have been expanded on more instead of what actually happened, because she gets burnt to a crisp by Electro within a few panels of being introduced. But a couple of years later, in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 4, Issue 16, also written by Dan Slott, Francine Fire makes her return as a clone made by the Jackal, who was actually Ben Reilly. He brought her back as a way to convince Electro to work for him. But she
came back wrong.
Francine was brought back with a little bit of her own electricity powers, which she then used to take out Max Dillon and assumed his place in the Jackal's plan, as well as taking on the name of Electro. She would go on to show up here and there, be a villain, stuff like that. Eventually she joined another incarnation of the Sinister Six, and would go on ultimately to join the all-female Sinister Syndicate. Did you know that a lady version of Dr. Octopus also exists? Not the one from the Spider-Verse movie, because that was a gender-swapped version of Octavius. No, this octopi exists in the main 616 continuity, and only showed up after the male Doc Ock had passed away. Caroline Traynor was a former student and admirer of Otto Octavius, and once he was gone, she adopted his arms and took on the name Doc Ock to continue to menace the Wallcrawler, though that was actually Ben Reilly too, the clone. She made a handful of appearances before she was actually instrumental in helping the Hand resurrect the original Doc Ock, and she gave him back his arms. From there, she would not be heard from for several years until returning in the Secret War storyline by Brian Michael Bendis with her brand new arms and the name Lady Ock. And then she would go on to pop up here and there being a lady version of Dr. Octopus until joining the all-female Sinister Syndicate. So I've mentioned the female Sinister Syndicate twice now. I suppose I should talk about their leader for some context purposes. She is the Beetle. Also for context purposes, I will talk about the male Beetle. Doc Ock and Electro are fairly well known, so this is for the benefit of the more casual viewers. The Beetle is a supervillain who dates all the way back to the 60s. His name is Abner Jenkins. He created the Beetle suit to become a mercenary for hire, but I can never get past those fingers. They're weird looking. This did bring him into conflict with several heroes, and he would upgrade his costume several times over the years. Eventually, he went on and became one of the original Thunderbolts, taking on the name Mach 1 and became an honest-to-God hero, leaving the name Beetle for others to take up, including today's subject, Louise Lincoln. She actually wasn't even the first female Beetle. She's actually like the 3rd female Beetle to show up. But also, she is the daughter of the Spider-Man villain Tombstone, so this is kind of a twofer. But she was created by Ed Brubaker in Captain America number 606. She wasn't really a character there, she was more of a... Well, she was a character, but she was just there to serve her purpose. She wound up in prison, and Ed Brubaker was pretty much done with her. Fortunately, 3 years later, Dan Slott brought her back on another Sinister Six in his Superior Spider-Man book. And then Nick Spencer really fleshed out the character in the Superior Foes of Spider-Man, which was such a great series. From there, she's gone on to be one of the more prolific of anyone else we're going to talk about today, and easily my favorite among them. And as previously mentioned, she did form her very own Sinister Syndicate, which also had Scorpia. Scorpia is obviously a female version of the Scorpion, and we need to jump into the heart of the 90s with Spider-Man Power of Terror. There's no way to describe this book but 90s. Spider-Man teams up with Deathlock and an armored Daredevil to take on Silvermane and the Maggia. And the bad guys there, they feel like they need some new muscle, so enter Elaine Cole, who was just basically there and given a brand new Scorpion suit, which had enhanced strength, enhanced speed, and a tail that can slice, crush, strangle, and shoot energy. She teamed up in this 1994 blockbuster with Hydro Man, Boomerang, the Beetle, and in a shocking twist, the good guys ended up winning. Scorpia would then pop up a little later and join even another version of the Sinister Six. Like, do they just let anyone join? And then she would lay dormant for a few years until Kevin Smith and the Dodsons brought her back in Spider-Man Black Cat, The Evil That Men Do. And here she had a costume change from her 90s mech monstrosity to a proper female Scorpion. From there on, she would pop up about as frequently as Lady Doc Ock or Electro, and then she would go on to become a part of the female Sinister Syndicate. Also of note would be that she is not the only female Scorpion running around the Marvel Universe. Also a member of the female Sinister Syndicate, who is also a female version of the original Sinister Six member, would be Anastasia Kravinoff, also known as Kraven the Hunter. She is actually the 3rd Kraven the Hunter, and she's also an Inhuman, but that really does not come up. She's also like 12 or 13 years old. But she is the original Kraven's daughter, and to prove her worth, she attacked Spider-Man in Amazing Spider-Man number 565 by Mark Guggenheim and Joe Kelly. And she would go on to have a few storylines, most notably being the Grim Hunt, and she is still currently active in the Marvel Universe as one of 2 Kraven the Hunters, the other being a clone of of Kraven the Hunter, calling himself the last son of Kraven the Hunter. So also in the female Sinister Syndicate is the White Rabbit, but she is not a female version of anyone, so we can't really talk about her today. That wouldn't be fair. While there are a few other female versions of Spider-Man villains to talk about, I think we may as well go back to the original Sinister Six, because there really is no Sand Girl and there is no Mysteria, but the Vulture does have a female version, though she is actually a hero and she is not called the Vulture, but she is Tiana Toombs. She is the granddaughter of Adrian Toombs, the original Vulture, and she calls herself Starling. She first appeared in 2019's Miles Morales Spider-Man, Volume 1, Issue number 5. She was created by Saladin Ahmed and drawn by Javier Garron. Javier Garron. But yes, as mentioned, she was the granddaughter of the original Vulture, who ultimately gave her the Starling suit and told her to follow her dreams. And from there, she would go on to be a hero and come into conflict with Tombstone and become the girlfriend of one Spider-Man, Miles Morales. You all stay hossy, and I will catch you next week. Goodbye.